Good evening, everyone. A warm namaskaram. I'm Jis, and the topic that we are going to discuss today is conservation on private land. Specifically, we are focusing on the role of agricultural landscapes in conservation. I want to make it clear that by saying agricultural landscapes, we are not going to discuss all the possible agricultural landscapes, but we'll be focusing on semi-natural plantations that are close to the forest in Kerala specifically. So I have been working on my doctoral research for the last 5 years in the Western Ghats, and I am currently a PhD scholar of Madurai Kamaraj University. I have just submitted my thesis in the last January, and the topic of my research was influence of phorophyte, habitat, and climate on diversity, spatial distribution, and community structure of epiphytic orchids in the southern Western Ghats. So for those who are not familiar with the terms, I will just explain. Epiphytic means refer to the plants that are like that depends on other trees or other plants for mechanical support, and it is different from parasites. Parasites are the plants that obtain nourishment from the supporting host, whereas epiphytes use these trees only for the mechanical support. And also the term phorophyte refers host tree, simply the tree that supports orchids. So I'm not going to take you into the very details of my research. And if you want to know more about my research, you can go to this particular link that I have given here. It's a blog on a page called The Life of Science, and in which I kind of narrate all the research activities and the detailed extensive sampling and everything. So if you want to know more about it, you can go to this. However, before discussing the importance of semi-natural plantations, I want to give you some, a brief account of why it is important. So, in order to address my research question, the major research question, I had to study this, epiphytic orchids that grows on trees at different levels, and the work was focusing the entire Kerala. I mean the Western Ghats of Kerala. So we had selected locations, and the sampling was done at different levels. I had to identify the different forest types available in the Western Ghats of Kerala, and in each forest type I had to scan a number of trees for orchids, and within each tree I had to study the specific branch or specific part of the tree where the orchid present. And so this is an idea. I think this will give you an idea about how it works. And if this is a tree that I hope you can see this, and based on the architecture of the tree, there are different zones. So this represents the trunk zone, and this is inner crown zone, middle crown zone, and the upper crown zone. So these orchids that grows on trees. So orchids can grow on any part of the tree, and this it is interesting to note that the climate that you experience in the upper crown zone could be totally different from the climate of the trunk zone. Why? Because the upper crown zone receives maximum sunlight, and as a result the temperature could be high and the moisture could be very less. So the orchids that will be present in this zone can be very tiny because they have to avoid losing water. Whereas the orchids present in the middle crown zone or inner crown zone can be big, and again the orchids present in the trunk zone can be totally different from the orchids that are present in the crown zone. So orchids have got this specific preference towards a particular zone. Again, within each zone, if for example, suppose an orchid is present on this particular primary branch, it becomes a substrate. So that is, a substrate is the term used to denote the any part of the tree where an orchid is attached. So if we find an orchid on this primary branch, it has got an immediate climate surrounding this, and this substrate plus that immediate climate makes it a unique habitat, and we term it as microhabitat. And this microhabitat would be different from this primary branch or this primary branch. Why? Because this branch it could be inclined to west, or like this could be inclined to east, or this the angle of inclination could be different, or the presence of organic matter could be different, and the amount of light received could be different. So all these factors work together and creates a unique microhabitat. So if you find like 10 orchids on a single tree, so maybe one here in the upper crown zone or middle crown zone or the trunk zone, all could be very different, and the habitat of each orchid could be different from one another. So it becomes more important in a when you check this rainforest structure. In a rainforest, you can see these tall canopy trees, and just next to that there will be like shorter trees, and then followed by like very short trees and palms, and sometimes shrubs, and then herbs and ground plants. So like it's a layered structure, and this layering actually enables different climatic conditions for each tree. So the more the climatic differences are like between each tree, there will be number of like habitats available within each tree and between each tree. So if you look at this single tree, the climate experienced by this particular branch could be totally different from such a similar branching in a shorter tree. So if a layered rainforest structure is structural diversity, it is actually known as structural diversity. So the structural diversity of trees is like very high in a rainforest structure, or in a old mature large forest woodland. So the higher the number of structural diversity in a forest, the higher the number, the more the epiphytic orchid diversity is. Which means, if there are more number of epiphytic orchids that are seen in a particular forest, it can mean that this particular forest would be very mature, very aged forest, and it could be like very primary in nature, or it has got this structurally very complex trees, and therefore it is very primary, very significant. It has got a good health. So when I say epiphytic orchids are important, you have to understand that it is because it can represent the health of a primary forest system. So it's just like using tiger as a flagship species. Now, just by conserving tiger, we are conserving the forest. Just like that, we are promoting the conservation of epiphytic orchids, so that the rich, structurally complex primary forest that supports epiphytic orchids also, survives. And another important aspect you would be interested in, like epiphytic orchids are sensitive to climatic conditions. So the regional climate can totally affect the climate within the crown and below the crown. So the immediate climate of an orchid can change according to the changes in the regional climate. So this also means that the changes in climate as a result of climate change or global warming can have like serious consequences on epiphytic orchids. Maybe seasonal variations are kind of acceptable. However, like extreme variations in either directions can have very negative impacts on epiphytic orchids. And these are the forest types wherein I investigated the patterns of epiphyte orchid diversity or distribution. And this is a deciduous forest, and this is the shola forest. It's from Silent Valley, and this represents montane evergreen forest, and this is semi-evergreen forest, and this is the wet evergreen forest in the low altitudes, and this is what we are going to talk about today. This is semi-natural plantations. So some of you might wonder why a proper ecology researcher would select a semi-natural plantation, along with other major forest types. It is because we already have an evidence in the form of a literature that says high epiphytic orchid diversity was seen in farmer-managed forest in Sopanavetta. And this particular work was done by my guide, Dr. G.B. Kuriakos, and his team in 2011 and in Karnataka. So it actually suggested that farmer-managed forests can kind of replace, the reserve forest there. So, because of this reason, I selected this particular habitat as one for my study area. And during our research, we observed a particular, phenomenon called orchid fall. So, and what do you mean by orchid fall? It is the natural or unnatural removal of orchids from the canopy. So, it kind of got us wondering, like, how it happens and how often it happens. What happens once they fall on the ground? Can they survive or do they perish? Or what are the like factors that causes this orchid fall and all this. So in order to understand the different aspects of orchid fall, we designed a project. And this was a project that comprised research and conservation. So the project was termed as Restoration of Orchids in Human Transformed Landscape, involving local community in Wayanad district, Kerala. And this was done with San Diego County Orchid Society. They financially supported the project. And I worked with Dr. in this project. So we had like 4 different objectives we wanted to know. So first was to understand, why this displacement of orchids happens. Why do they fall from the canopy? And second was to understand the rate of orchid fall and what are the factors affecting this low orchid loss. And third was to create awareness about orchid conservation among local community and students. And fourth was to restore these fallen orchids with the help of local community. So this is the map. It's a very simple map. It's just to show that the selected site, and this is the plantation, and very adjacent to it is the natural forest. And this particular belt is the Chembra Peak belt, and that comes under very rich, biologically very rich area called Wayanad Plateau. So first we had carried out a research for a couple of months. So we wanted to understand like how this orchid fall happens in this plantation and in the adjacent forest. So I did around 50 transects, which means 50 into 10 would be like 500 trees in each habitat. So scanning them is pretty strenuous, and at the end of it, what we got was in semi-natural plantations, we got 36 species of orchids, epiphytic orchids. And whereas in semi-urban forest, we got only 17 species. And it is very remarkable that we got 14 endemic species of orchids in semi-natural plantations, whereas you can see it is only 4 in semi-evergreen forest. And the abundance was very high. The diversity is high, and also the abundance was high in semi-natural plantations. And the orchid fall was also high. And it was mainly because of the management activities practiced in the plantation. So management activities involves like there are a lot of plantation workers there. It's pretty active plantation, and they do pruning and sometimes removal of epiphytic orchids, thinking that it's a parasite, and sometimes they cut the trees off for some other management related activities. And these are the major reasons for. So it is more like human, because of the human interference, the orchid fall happens. Whereas in semi-evergreen forest, the orchid abundance was kind of low, and however, there was this orchid fall, in proportion to the abundance. And here, the reasons for orchid fall was like more natural. That includes rain, wind, and and sometimes monkeys and mostly monkeys. And also like deforestation. There was a lot of development activities that were going on in this particular forest. It was very close to the plantations, but it was open to people, and a lot of unfavorable activities were going on. So that kind of probably affected the habitat. So after getting these results, we went on to the phase 2, which involves conservation awareness program. So we collaborated with this government higher secondary school in Vaitiri in Wayanad, and we conducted a one-day orchid workshop there. So this was quite a success, because in this workshop we got different expertise to talk about orchids, and we introduced the very basic biology and orchids to the students. And the kind of students attended this program was I think from 6th to 8th standard, and around 120 students from 3 different schools attended this program. And also we arranged a photo exhibition of around 100 species of different orchids, epiphytic and ground orchids. And another important activity was orchid trail walk in plantations. Since we had this collaboration with the plantation, we were able to take the students in different groups, like 3 different groups to the plantations, and they were given an opportunity to experience, how we work in the forest. And they have been trained to identify orchids, and they've been trained how to take data in a very basic manner. And they have also observed all the tree characteristics there. Other than students, there were also more stakeholders. Obviously, that included like forest watchers. Most of them belong to the indigenous community, and also the people in the indigenous community, and the Anganwadi, come health centers in the area. Then plantation workers, obviously. So these stakeholders were also and also the plantation owners. So they were given importance, and they have been trained to how to identify orchids, and also what to do if they find fallen orchids. And collaboration with other institutions, like we had this expertise from MSSR of in Wayanad, and also like some youth attended the program from representing Wake Up Kochi. And in phase 3, rescue was done. And during these orchid trail walks, all the students and forest watchers and the local community, all these stakeholders were encouraged to rescue fallen orchids. And this is what you can see here. They are actually rescuing orchids from a fallen branch, and this will be restored to a suitable habitat like this. So again, before restoring, we had research data to say where we should be restoring this orchid, and on what height, or we basically categorize them into canopy orchids and trunk orchids, and we restored them according to their preferred habitat. Yeah, these are some pictures, and this was done for the monitoring purpose, and monitoring was done for like another 6 months. And at the end of this program, we had an impact assessment. So for this, we used some criteria like rate of survival of restored orchids. So obviously, we restored around, I think, with around 60 orchids, I think, with all these stakeholders, and we monitored them. And at the end of this 6 months, we observed that around 90% of the restored orchids survived. So that is a big success, and it actually suggests that this restoration program can be a tool for the conservation of orchids. And another criteria we used is understanding of stakeholders. So this we obtained through personal communications and surveys and some interview mode of data recording. And this actually showed that they had better understanding, better knowledge about orchids. And also we got the feedbacks, and we had some very interesting findings as well from the the research part.
Tropical forests are one of the most complex ecosystems on the earth. Recently, canopy of the tropical forests have become an area of interest among ecologists working in the tropics. Canopy biology is known as the last frontier in tropical forest research. Canopy, the interface between atmosphere and forest floor, support a unique world of flora and fauna. Vascular epiphytes are the major component of flora in the canopy. Further, orchids from family Orchidaceae make the most successful group of plants amongst vascular epiphytes. Since ancient periods, orchids are being used as food, cultural symbol, medicine, and for trade. However, what do the science tell us about them? Orchids can be classified into three groups: epiphytes that grows on trees for mechanical support, terrestrials that grows on ground, and lithophytes on rocky outgrowths. They stand out from other plants with specialized floral architecture that sometimes imitates their pollinators.
Look at this plant. This is an orchid. Can you believe it? It is very tough to locate epiphytic orchids in a cluttered forest like this. Microhabitat and general habitats where they live have to be protected. Habitat loss is the major problem that orchids are facing. Preserve, conserve an area as a whole habitat may be the only way ahead. Orchids, if present, gives a general picture as how healthy an area is.
Habitat loss, forest fragmentation, changes in climate, changes in land use, illegal collections for trade can affect orchids.
വയനാട്ടിലെ കാടുകളിൽ ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഒരു ചെറിയ ടീം ഒരുപാട് തവണ സന്ദർശിക്കുകയും ഓർക്കിഡുകളെ പഠിക്കാനായിട്ടുള്ള ശ്രമങ്ങൾ നടത്തുകയും ചെയ്തിരുന്നു. കാടുകളിൽ മാത്രമല്ല, നിത്യഹരിതമായിട്ടുള്ള വനങ്ങൾ, സെമി എവർഗ്രീൻ ആയിട്ടുള്ളതും എവർഗ്രീനും ആയിട്ടുള്ളതുമായ കാടുകളിലും, അതുപോലെ തന്നെ അവയോട് ചേർന്നുള്ള സെമി നാച്ചുറൽ പ്ലാന്റേഷൻസ് എന്ന് പറയാവുന്ന, അതായത് പ്രൈവറ്റ് ഓണർഷിപ്പിലുള്ള പ്ലാന്റേഷൻസ്.
The extensive explorations by the team in the biodiversity hotspot, the Western Ghats, in the state of Kerala, led to finding more than 200 species of orchids, of which some are very rare. Results suggested high epiphytic diversity on shade trees in the semi-natural crop plantations. Also, high orchid fall was observed in semi-natural plantations due to management activities.
In this regard, we made an attempt to restore such fallen orchids with the involvement of school students, local farmers, and teachers in Wayanad district. We have given training to students and teachers. With the training, we enabled them to identify fallen orchids and collect them from the site. These plants then restored into an analogous habitat where they grow normally.
Conservation workshops, photo exhibitions, orchid trail walk, pictorial guides were arranged by the team to communicate with the target groups.
ജീവിതത്തിലെ നല്ലൊരു ദിവസം കൂടുതൽ വിജ്ഞാനപ്രദം. ക്ലാസ് റൂമിൽ ക്ലാസ് എടുക്കുന്നതിനേക്കാളും ക്ലാസ് കേൾക്കുന്നതിനേക്കാൾ കൂടുതൽ സന്തോഷവും കൂടുതൽ അറിവും കിട്ടിയ കുട്ടികൾ, ഞാനും അത് നന്നായി ആസ്വദിച്ചു. ഇനിയും ഞങ്ങൾ ഇതുപോലുള്ള എക്സ്പീരിയൻസുകൾ, ഇതുപോലുള്ള അനുഭവങ്ങൾ പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കുന്നു.
The level of awareness among landowners of semi-natural agricultural landscapes are also important.
വയനാട് വൈത്തിരി എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ സ്ഥലത്ത് കുറച്ച് സ്ഥലമുണ്ട്, ഏലത്തോട്ടമാണ്. കാടുമായിട്ട് ചേർന്ന് കിടക്കുന്ന ഭാഗമായിട്ട് നല്ല ജൈവവൈവിധ്യം നാച്ചുറൽ ആയിട്ട് തന്നെ ഒരുപാട് ബയോഡൈവേഴ്സിറ്റി ഉള്ള ഒരു സ്ഥലമാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ ആയിരിക്കാം ടി ഒരു ഒരു പ്രോഗ്രാം, കുട്ടികളെ ഒരു അവയർനെസ് പ്രോഗ്രാം എന്നുള്ളത് ഞാൻ ഐ അഗ്രി. ആ പ്രോഗ്രാം എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു അത് വൈൽഡ് ഓർക്കിഡ്സിനെ പറ്റിയുള്ള പ്രോഗ്രാമായിരുന്നു. ഈ സ്കൂളിലുള്ള കുട്ടികളെ വരെ പ്രാവശ്യമായിട്ട് അവരോട് വന്നിട്ട് വൈൽഡ് ഓർക്കിഡ്സ് ഒക്കെ കളക്ട് ചെയ്യാനും പരിചയപ്പെടുത്താനും റിസർച്ച് പ്രോജക്റ്റായിട്ട് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പഠിക്കുന്ന കുട്ടികൾ ഈ സ്വാഭാവികമായിട്ട് ബയോഡൈവേഴ്സിറ്റി റിച്ച് ആയിട്ടുള്ള സ്ഥലങ്ങൾ കാണുകയും ഇതിനുള്ള ഈ സസ്യങ്ങളെ പരിചയപ്പെടുത്തുന്നതും ചെയ്യുന്നത് നല്ല അറിവുകൾ പകർന്നു കൊടുക്കുന്ന ഒരു പ്രോഗ്രാമൊക്കെയാണ്. നമ്മള് കൃഷി സമ്പ്രദായങ്ങളൊക്കെ കഴിയുന്നതും ജൈവവൈവിധ്യം കളയാതെ സംരക്ഷിക്കാനായിട്ടുള്ള ഉത്തരവാദിത്വം കൃഷിക്കാർക്കും ആയിട്ടുണ്ട്.
കടൽനിരപ്പിൽ നിന്നും 3500 അടിയാണ് നമ്മുടെ എസ്റ്റേറ്റിന്റെ ഏകദേശം ഒരു മധ്യഭാഗം. ഏറ്റവും ടോപ്പ് 3800-4000 അടിയുടെ ഏകദേശം. വയനാട്ടില് ബാക്കിയുള്ള സ്ഥലങ്ങളിൽ കിട്ടുന്നതിനേക്കാൾ കൂടുതൽ മഴ നമ്മുടെ പ്രശ്നമാണ്. നടക്കുന്നുണ്ട്, എൻഗേജ് ഉള്ളതുകൊണ്ട് മനസ്സിലാകുന്നുണ്ട്. പിന്നെ അവിടുത്തെ അന്തരീക്ഷം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ എൻ്റെ എസ്റ്റേറ്റ് 2 ഭാഗം ഫോറസ്റ്റ് ചുറ്റപ്പെട്ടു. പിന്നെ അവിടുള്ള അഗ്രികൾച്ചർ ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് അതേപോലെ ഗാർഡൻസിന് പറ്റിയ ഒരു ട്രാക്കാണ്. അതേപോലെ അവിടുത്തെ മണ്ണും കംപ്ലീറ്റ് നല്ല വെർജിൻ സോയിലാണ്. അത് തന്നെ നമുക്ക് മാക്സിമം ഈ എക്കോ ഫ്രണ്ട്ലി ആണ്. ആ മണ്ണും അന്തരീക്ഷവും വെള്ളവും വായുവും എല്ലാം. അതുകൊണ്ട് അവിടെയുള്ള മരങ്ങളും അതിനെ പറ്റി പിടിച്ചിരിക്കുന്ന ഈ ഓർക്കിഡ് ഐറ്റംസ് നാച്ചുറലായിട്ട് നിങ്ങൾ നല്ലോണം തഴച്ചു വളരുന്നു. പിന്നെ ഞാൻ അതുപോലെ ഈ കാണുന്നതൊക്കെ പ്രത്യേകമുള്ള ഈ സസ്യങ്ങളെയും ചെറിയ ചെറിയ ജന്തുജാലങ്ങളൊക്കെ ഞാൻ ഉൾപ്പെടുത്താം. നിങ്ങൾ ഇനിയും വന്ന് ഗവേഷണം നടത്തിയ ഇഷ്ടംപോലെ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഐഡന്റിഫൈ ചെയ്ത് നിങ്ങളുടെ ആവശ്യത്തിന് പഠിക്കാൻ കഴിയും. കുറച്ചും കൂടി ഉള്ളോട്ട് മേലെ കുറച്ചും കൂടി പോയി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഈ ഓരോ എലിവേഷൻ അനുസരിച്ച് മേലെ പോകുന്നതോറും വ്യത്യസ്തമായ രീതിയിലുള്ള ഓർക്കിഡുകളും സസ്യജാലങ്ങളും ഇഷ്ടംപോലെ 100 കൊല്ലം മുന്നേ ഉള്ള രീതിയിൽ തന്നെയാണ് ഇപ്പോൾ അവിടെ ഉള്ളത്. അത് ഫോട്ടോ തട്ടിയിട്ടില്ല. വരികയാണെങ്കിൽ ഞാൻ പരമാവധി ഹെൽപ്പ് ചെയ്ത് എല്ലാം പരിചയപ്പെടുത്തി തരാം. എനിക്കറിയാത്തത് നിങ്ങൾ മൂലം ഞാൻ പഠിക്കാൻ കഴിയും.
Creating new findings, these efforts has created an impact in the target groups. About 90% survival of the restored orchids suggests that restoration can be a conservation tool for fallen orchids. Orchids can be an indicator group to alarm us with changes in climate or forest structure, especially in the deteriorating Western Ghats. Epiphytic orchids can nurture faunal diversity, ensure the health of forest canopy, therefore forest ecosystem. They can also be an income for humans apart from ecosystem services. The protection of orchids in the canopy will enable us to protect a very sensitive interface between the forest and atmosphere, the canopy, and thereby millions of lives.
Yeah, thank you, Ratish, for sharing this.
Yeah.
And I do not know if it was a pleasant experience for the participants to watch it. However, I assume that you got a pretty clear story of what we did there. Okay, so this semi-natural plantations, like based on this particular project, we came to know that these semi-natural plantations are a major habitat, which means it can be like equally, it can be very equal to the adjacent forest, or sometimes it would be like controversial if I say it can replace, the evergreen forest or semi-evergreen forest. But in fact, in a situation where the population is increasing and the forest is like decreasing, so it is also possible that to utilize this semi-natural plantations as a habitat for different kinds of biodiversity. So it has like this huge mature large native shade trees for coffee and cardamom that provides structural diversity, and this structural diversity with unique micro habitat conditions supports a large number of epiphytic orchids. So the abundance of epiphytic orchids can be used as an indicator of complex tropical forest, and this semi-natural plantation is also more or less equal to the semi-evergreen forest, or actually more or less equal to the evergreen forest. And apart from these findings, there were like also a lot of different biodiversity seen there, like including plants and animals in these agricultural landscapes. And this is something I wanted to like mention, because this particular plant here, it's a ground orchid, and it is known as Malabar daffodil, and the scientific name is Ipsia malabarica. And we were kind of shocked to see this particular plant in an agricultural plantation, and this is a plantation area. It belongs to some private person, and during 5 years of research, we never got to see this. Never got to see a single plant of this species, and this was the probably the one and last time that we got to see this species. So, and it is not enlisted as critically endangered or endangered by IUCN. However, the population is very, very, very small, and it is probably endangered. And also, this area had this huge repository of like different plants and animals, but I'm just pointing out some very few plants and animals. So this is obviously this is Atlas moth, and this is another ground orchid called Eulophia zolingeri, and this was the only sighting record of this species during 5 years. And this is Epiphytic roseum, which is a very common ground orchids that is seen even in the lower areas as well. So what makes these agricultural landscapes important for biodiversity? We have already seen they are like becoming, it's a heaven for biodiversity. And so from the research that I discussed in the beginning, you might be able to understand that these particular semi-natural plantations also have a different layered tree structure, kind of resembling a forest, an evergreen forest. And they are shade trees. They are maintained because they are like shade trees for coffee or cardamom, but thankfully they are native species. And they are matured, and they provide very unique structural diversity with unique climatic conditions, thereby increasing the number of microhabitats. And this supports more orchids or other epiphytic plants. And again, these are contiguous or like adjacent to the natural forest, and sometimes can act as corridors for different kinds of animals. And deforestation and development activities that happens in the forest, especially in the hilly ranges, there are a lot of activities going on. Sometimes it's mining or quarrying or different sort of activities, and these sort of development activities also push these animals out of the forest, and they kind of take shelter in the adjacent agricultural landscapes. And this becomes a multi-species self-sustaining ecosystem, just like a forest. So in Kerala, we have got like agricultural landscapes. I would say it again, like semi-natural plantations in focus, adjacent to forest in Kerala. Like during British reign, we had like converted, a lot of hilly forests, hilly tracts of, this forest into plantations of coffee, tea, cardamom, and in some places it was rubber and eucalyptus, etc. So today there are like two or four grama panchayats that share borders with forest, and they do have like these large plantations, and you can see that these monocrop plantations are there. That includes teak, rubber, eucalyptus, tea. And interestingly, there is no research that has been done on the biodiversity of these agricultural plantations or ecosystem services. Maybe I think there are like one or two research work that is available from India. And again, rubber and eucalyptus. Yes, there are some a couple of studies available on these two crops, because there is a one study by from Center for Development Studies that says like rubber plantations can have like very negative implications on environment. It can change the climate and groundwater level in a very negative manner. And yeah, as we discussed, this intensive agricultural practice, or sometimes this monocrop plantations close to forest, always have a kind of likelihood of expansion and encroachment. It's always there. As the population expands, there will be a lot of pressure on the agricultural expansion of the land, and sometimes encroachment is a very common practice in India. It's happening almost every day, and this also can increase conflicts. The conflicts between man, animal, and between animal and animal, or man and man. All this sort of conflicts increases day by day because of all this. Extensive, or the intensive agricultural practices in these zones. And again, the changes in local climate, groundwater, soil structure, plant species or animal species, all this can happen from this intensive plantations, agricultural plantations. Then removal of native species is a common thing, because in Kerala, if you remember, the rubber plantation started somewhere in the 1925, I think, and then since then, there have been a lot of rubber plantations coming up all across Kerala, and in order to do that, we had to remove the native species, all the native trees that we used as a source of food or timber or that. So that's what happens, or that's what one thing that comes along. And again, this introduction of these exotic species sometimes invites these parasitic or invasive populations. So, okay, we understand that the agricultural landscapes, like semi-natural plantations, can have this huge, diversity in there. So, okay, so how, what are the advantages of conserving them? It's if we conserve them, it actually helps us to resist changing climate or regulate the regional or local climate. And it also helps us to improve our carbon stocking or the sequestration process. And the maintenance of ecosystem services, we actually do depend on a lot of plants and even sometimes animals for different kind of services. So that is we can maintain it by keeping an agricultural landscape. Again, the food crops or cash crops, and these can be done together in using different strategies. So biodiversity conservation is a plus point there. And it also gives multiple livelihood options. Sometimes it can, invite the opportunity of tourism, into your land, or sometimes it can be a research lab for some students or researchers. And then it gives food for you, and then it gives income from your cardamom or coffee. So there are different multiple livelihood options that can be made available. And also you would naturally turn into a more sustainable living. And also the physical and mental health, that is pretty important, especially in this particular era. So we need more better mental or physical supporting structure. Also, there is this national Red Plus strategy that has been prepared by the ministry, and it talks about the possibilities of result-based payment for carbon storage or carbon sequestration for communities that are living in the forest. So this is for right now. It means only EDCs, eco development committees, or joint forest management. However, it is possible that it might, in future, it can come to trees outside forest as well. And another important thing is we can encourage the renewable resource called timber in construction, because we have completely switched into other non-renewable resources, and resulting in more carbon production. So timber can be totally it's a renewable resource that can be used in construction. And also you have the opportunity to give your products away, like cardamom, if it is a green certified product, because you are conserving local biodiversity in the area. So that is also a prospect. Then food security and survival, like pandemics like COVID-19 or natural calamities or other disasters, food security becomes a big question. Even we have seen that the last 3 or 4 months, some of us were like very in a very bad situation, or like totally panicked because we didn't have enough food, or we didn't have any products in our homes. So we had to totally depend on some trucks coming from other states. So food security is very important. And tourism is an opportunity, and also research can be like encouraged. So I thought this would be very appropriate to include like monsoon retreats, Kumli, that's owned by one of the organizer, like Subish. So this is a wonderful model. It's conservation on agricultural landscape. So why I have listed this particular resort? It is a resort, but they are doing it in a wonderful way. As you can see, the cottages are built on pillars, and so the land below the pillars can be used for different purpose. And the cardamom plantations that you see on the ground, again there are food crops like jackfruit trees are there. The native trees are used, and because of these native trees also, like a lot of biodiversity comes. And the organic farming of this cardamom gives them obviously the cardamom, and which is marketable and with high value. And also the chances of disease are pretty low because of the natural conditions that is maintained. And so they are actually achieving all these together. They're doing this organic farming. They're ensuring the food security. The food supply is there by sometimes by jackfruit or mango or like different fruits. And they have got different options. Like the tourism is one income, and agriculture is the second source of income. Then it's a carbon neutral property because they are storing more carbon than they produce, so it becomes carbon neutral. And the native trees are conserved, local biodiversity is conserved, and the construction is less harmful. And they are very active in tourism, and it is also can be a research area for students, and it also supports rural economy because it can provide employment for the people from the same locality. And another model that I want to talk about is integrated farming, mixed farming. Integrated farming or mixed farming. It's a model that's very close to my place, and it's known as jackfruit paradise. And there is an interesting story behind this. The owner of this particular farm has been doing rubber plantation for like so long, like probably in 30-40 years. And then on a fine day, he decided to remove these rubber, he just cut the rubber trees down from his 5-acre plot. And he did that, and he planted and he went on a tour all over Kerala, and he collected all the indigenous varieties of jackfruits and created jackfruit paradise. And now he has got this wonderful, in fact, a paradise of different indigenous varieties of jackfruits. And along with, he has different trees, like all the native trees. Also, he cultivates vegetables, fruit trees, and all that. And it is zero budget natural farming. He doesn't use any chemicals. And the disease control is pretty. Disease doesn't come, very often in these kind of plots because it's maintained very naturally, and they use the traditional knowledge in it. And jackfruit, for example, jackfruit tree is a tree food crop. It's like that is something I think it's an innovative idea that we have to look into. And because if you plant a jackfruit tree, it is going to be there for the next 500 years sometimes, so you don't have to spend a single rupee on this, but it is going to feed your family for the 500 years probably. So that is the kind of investment he is doing. And it's acting as a gene bank, and also he manages the soil and water conservation using traditional knowledge. And he has already got like different incomes from this land. Is selling these value-added products from jackfruits, and And there are also visitors coming, and he's got a nursery of selling the saplings of the jackfruit. So there are like different things are happening, and he's getting a good income. And also he has created local employment. He's taught these women, who are like very less educated, but he taught them how to do budding and grafting, and they're doing it wonderfully, and they've become like very self-sufficient now. So that is very important. And it is a climate resilient agriculture. So let's come to this homestead gardens. So we have been talking about this semi-natural plantations and agricultural landscapes, farm models that have been like working for some time. And so we may not, all of us may not have the luxury of this, land. However, we might have a home garden, So if we like maintain these home gardens with the help of, some scientific knowledge or with the help of expertise, we can we'll be able to like maintain it, to preserve the traditional knowledge that exists in our locality, in our family, or in our, community, whatever. And also it would be a source of like securing our food resources, like by planting some fruit trees or vegetables, and it can give you some economic benefits if you want. And conservation of soil and water resources is also can be done along. And by maintaining a small forest or like garden, or sometimes we have a tea forest, so these kind of structures can regulate the local climate as well, and it helps you to become like mentally healthy and creative. And it also supports kind of biodiversity that comes around. And so the socio-cultural, the beliefs, aspects, myths, and everything associated with a community can also like survive. So these are like some pictures I had taken during the COVID-19 lockdown, and this is from my own home garden. So you can see like a number of different birds and butterflies and trees here. And I was totally surprised to find out that I have a tarantula living in my garden, and this was like quite a surprise to me. And yeah, and there are also, okay, I hope you can see this. This is the wing of a painted bat. This was also like a surprising finding for me. And again, there is this bullfrog, and there's so much more diversity. And here, there is this terrestrial orchid. I do not know if you can see it very well. There is these two plants of terrestrial orchids, Zitseng. This was like the first time that I recorded, it in my own land. And yeah, interestingly, all this biodiversity I recorded in rubber plantations, and that's ironic because we have only rubber plantations, and all this huge diversity was recorded in these rubber plantations. And I'm not even nearly done, and I'm sure like I'll have to spend a year to complete the listing of biodiversity in my home garden. So that would worth millions for sure. So this conservation of biodiversity, along with agricultural landscapes in your own agricultural landscapes, it's a pretty important strategy. It's very relevant according to the time. It is relevant because like we have actually gone through like some of the worst crises that we have faced in our at least in 100 years. And this economy is kind of crashed, and people have gone back to their villages from cities, and many of us have lost our jobs, have lost our health, and some of us have lost their lives, and the resources are like declining. So there is this panic situation, and also because the economy is like struggling, we cannot expect that help is going to come to us any soon. So if we are like in this phase, it is time for us to help ourselves, and it is probably time for us to just look around, just take a look around you and at the environment around you, because it is that environment that have been supporting you and your family and the previous generations there for many years. So maybe it is time for us to choose localization, to go back to your own roots, go back to your land, go back to your community. and develop what is the best survival strategy that suits you. So also it is important because the changes that are happening in the world right now due to climate change or the global warming is becoming like more frequent. The heat waves are becoming more frequent. The extreme rainfall events are more frequent. Flood and erosion and the sea surface temperature is increasing, and so it's all happening at the same time. Okay? So in order to overcome this changes in climate to ensure our survival, we might have to develop a new strategy, and I think it is localization. So we don't really want to someone sitting in some other country to decide our diet. We should go back to our own land and produce what we need, so that we can survive on our own. So this is my call. Let's localize to survive through this Anthropocene period. For more updates in this subject, this was just a discussion. I am also learning in this. So if you want to follow for more updates and more stories in these conservation models, I'll be visiting more models soon. So if you want to know more about it, you can follow me on my YouTube channel. It's called Woman of the Earth. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jis. I have a few questions. One is that is there any survey has been done on orchids in Kerala or in any other place in India where we have this list of orchids present, and then over the years there has reduced or increased? Those kind of survey, is there anything done? At least in a small area, at least.
No, not really, not really.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
do have a just taxonomic inventory, listing all the species that are seen in each state, but
Okay.
we don't have a update on their abundance or area-wise diversity or area-wise abundance or even habitat-wise. There is nothing actually.
Yeah. Okay.
All we know is that we have this around 259 species of orchids in Kerala, but that is again going up and down because of the new researches that are happening. Yeah.
Okay. Because since this has impact on climate, right? So if there is any change in climate, obviously it will impact the orchids, right? So if we do something, a survey kind of thing, or in a smaller area, or if the government can do something like that, so that we can monitor our climate change using these orchids, right?
Oh yeah, yes. Like I mentioned, I think these orchids are very sensitive to climatic conditions, and so the regional climate can totally affect the climate within a tree, and again when I talk about this tree, there is different climates within a tree. So these microclimate conditions again changes. So it's very complicated at times, and you need a lot of human labor and also money, because you should be on the tree, right, to record all the climatic conditions. So you have to have all the required equipments and all the settings to study this, and you need a very temporal, it's like a long-term study to understand these patterns.
Sure.
Yeah.
And one more thing is this clearly states that this big trees are very important. You can't replace that with the smaller samplings. You cut down the bigger trees and then planting some few samplings that will not replace 100 years of trees, right?
Exactly. So that is one major takeaway, because sometimes people say planting some, even environmental clearance is done sometimes on the basis that, okay, you guys just go and plant 100 trees somewhere, but that is never going to replace the kind of forest that you're cutting down. Because if it's a primary forest, that is must have taken thousands of years to develop, and these orchids can be just an indicator to show that this particular forest is super rich. It provides the trees are different layered, and therefore provides high structural diversity, and therefore supporting different climatic conditions. So it is actually a complete system. So you cannot replace this complete system just by planting some 10 trees somewhere on the roadside. So I hope people understand.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the next question is from Christy. So how successful is the orchid conservation through in vitro technique? I'll just add one more thing. Is there any what do you call it, tissue cultured or wild orchids where you can replace it in the plantation whatever mentioned, right? So is there anything I've done by your team or
Yeah,
anyone?
there is this institution in Trivandrum. It's called TBGRI, Tropical Botanical Garden Research and Institute, I think. So they have done some sort of work regarding this, and they had, I think, multiplied this endangered species called Paphiopedilum drury. It's also known as lady slipper orchid, and they have done that. But for some reason, they have not been able to like reintroduce into the wild. Yeah, actually, the departments do not really encourage the restoration, programs in natural habitats. But yeah, but we could maybe consider this restoring this,
The wildlife.
yeah, restoring them into other like natural, semi-natural plantations or other habitats. Yeah, that is possible. But
Yeah.
in order to like create such multiplied plantings, it might take some time, and it actually sometimes it fails because we don't have a guidelines towards in the process, like regarding the procedures of whatever to in the biotechnology, especially regarding orchids. So there are not set procedures, and sometimes it fails. And there was an attempt by a student in Sacred Heart College, and I think it did not do very well. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is from James Samara. Where does epiphytic plants derive their nutrients from? Since the fact that they grow up trees or canopies and not the ground like any other. So if you can update about the anatomy of the orchid and how they take the nutrients from the air.
Okay, so I'll just tell you this. I mean, they have got this. I already told you that the positioning, the positioning of epiphytic orchids in a canopy, it depends on different factors, like the amount of light received, or the amount of or the temperature or the moisture. Like all these factors can determine where they are located, and they do have a hanging root. It's called velamen. It's like most epiphytic orchids have hanging roots called velamen, and these roots are capable of absorbing moisture from the atmosphere. So that is how they absorb moisture, and they are not parasite. They don't derive any nutrition from the tree, so they can actually prepare their own nourishment. Yeah.
So
1 minute. There is a question from Ratan Rohit. Any commercial use of orchid that defines the state of them, like medicinal properties? With this, even I need to add one more thing. Was there any smuggling happen with orchid in India? Because I have read an article on Korea smuggling of orchid.
Okay. Yeah, smuggling of orchids is a pretty common thing. I'm sad to say that, but it's happening almost everywhere. If you have seen a news just a week back, I think it said like around 6 old people were lost. They were looking for orchids in somewhere in Indonesia, I think, and they got lost in the forest. So, I mean, it was. I can understand that it was pretty much illegal, exploration, and it happens all over Asia. And in India also there are like a lot of cases that have been reported, and also there is a research paper that is available by Dr. Pankaj Kumar and some others. So you can Google that. It talks about all the illegal, collection and smuggling that happens regarding orchids, wild orchids. Yeah, and I forgot the previous question. What was that?
Previous question was commercial use of orchids that defines the state of them, like medicinal properties. Is there any?
As of now, I'm not really aware of any, wide-scale commercial use of any orchids. But there are like some traditional knowledge that says orchids can be used for some, diseases, and like some even like fever and some ear issues and all that. But that is like traditional knowledge. Okay, and there is this ground orchid called the Malaxis. I think that is used in the making of Chavanaprasha and that sort of related Ayurvedic preparations. So there is this agency in Tamil Nadu, I think, that use it kind of common. Yeah.
So the next question is, what is the altitude range for orchids to grow? Usually only in the higher altitude or even in...
Yeah, orchids are seen like all across actually the gradient because we have actually I studied the preference towards the altitudinal gradients as well, and at the end of my research what I found is that they do have a preference towards the mid altitudes, so that is something pretty common in tropical forest in terms of species diversity. So this mid-altitude pattern is also observed among orchids, and there are orchids that are seen on the very lower areas, sometimes like 30, 40 meters. But those orchids that are seen in the mid-altitudes are different, and those and so the orchids have this specificity, like in terms of altitude, in terms of sometimes latitude, in terms of habitat, in terms of tree characteristics, and within tree in terms of the microhabitat features.
Okay. So the next question is from Masin Raja. What are the possible abiotic stress tolerance mechanisms operating in epiphytic orchids?
Yeah, I'm not really aware of that because there are not many work that is available in this regard. So I may not be, I may not want to make a comment regarding that.
Okay, no problem. No problem. I think we are done with the questions. Preeti, do you have any more? Okay, I have few more. I think we'll discuss this offline, no problem. Okay, so we can conclude this session, right? Yes. Okay, I think no more questions from participants.
Oh, can I add one thing? Like
yeah, sure.
So I have discussed these different models so that people get encouraged, to think about new, agricultural landscapes while conserving your local biodiversity. So I think this is the literally the need of the hour. And if any of you have that interest, I think we can provide the expertise. We could contact the Living Earth or the organizers and the scientific team. Like, we are ready to help you out to plan it or to execute it. So that let's do it together. And I think Living Earth is also intending to start a project like this. So we can definitely come up with more ideas together. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think participants have heard that before. Yeah. Thank you, Jis Sebastian. It was a very, very informative one, and even for me, like, I love orchids a lot. I think a lot of information has been shared. I think the participant has enjoyed it. Got one more. Yeah, nice presentation.
Okay.
That was in the chat. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. It was very good.